It gives me great pleasure to be speaking with Jo Halliday from Theale Green, the head teacher at Theale Green in Berkshire. The Let's Localise alumni feature is something that I know, people have taken advantage of in the past to get past students to interact back with their school and to re-engage with their school. And it seems to me to be a really good resource and a great way to connect with past students and for them to pass their skills and motivation and even volunteering and so on skills back onto the school that they've come from. And I know that Theale Green is an outstanding school, and I'm sure that they've got many students in the alumnus program, or many alumnus that could take care of that. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, Jo, that can take us through the process of the alumni program and how you see that it may work for you, which could be a great help, I think, to other head teachers when viewing this interview. So first up, I'd like to probably ask you is, with the world pandemic, with the COVID pandemic that's just taken place and coincidentally is actually still going on, but, fortunately through the vaccination program that the UK government's introduced, we're not as great a threat as we once were. But with that and the huge upheaval that it had for education, how did you deal with the challenges that brought for your school, and what sort of challenges have you had to face so far, and what challenges do you see probably still going on into the future as a result of the pandemic?
And I think as we move through the pandemic into a different stage, I think the world is sort of shifting on its axis again, with everything going on in Eastern Europe, and I think that's adding real challenges for young people that may not be obvious at first sight. But young people are great thinkers, and I think there's a lot for them to sort of feel worried about at the moment. And I think in terms of the pandemic, some of the key issues that we thought may be significant, maybe are less so. But I think what we've noticed, and from talking with other schools, what a lot of schools have noticed is, particularly with the younger students, that they've lost out on 2 years worth of socialisation, and that's really important in terms of their developmental stage, and their developmental stage and their mental health, and to learn those skills of socialisation. But at the same time, of course, they've spent so much more time on their phones. And I hesitate to say social media, because social media can be a really good thing. So, but a lot more time looking at phones and communicating through phones. And what we're seeing are sort of youngsters in the playground without that ability to socialise in the way we would expect them to for their age. And that in the school community, we've also got all of the adults who have also all been affected, but we're asking the adults to have a sort of a greater raised awareness of what the young people may be going through, and just this really sort of complex dynamic of human behaviours. And that's what schools are. They're just a huge melting pot of human behaviours in what is a very, very challenging time. And I think I sort of picked up on the second part of your question there, which was, how have you been dealing with this? And of course, there's a lot from the government about catch-up funding and how we catch up and level up, but actually that's pretty anxiety-inducing for young people in itself, because we're not sure who they're trying to catch up with, and it feels like it's a race and they've got behind. So we've just focused entirely on the well-being of our community and being really positive and moving forward and looking at the horizon. And just really trying to say, okay, we're just getting back on track, and what have we got to look forward to?
I think that's a really interesting point that you raised, particularly about the socialisation, because as you rightly say, they've all had their faces embedded in their phones during the COVID period, but nothing beats that one-to-one or that one-to-many contact that you get in a playground or you get in a social environment like a school. And it's interesting that the direction that you've taken, which personally I think is the right one, not to focus entirely on trying to play catch up, because that is stress inducing. I mean, I have a child of my own and I know exactly what that's like. So I think I think just getting people back to some form of normality and getting the students back into a form of normality is probably the most important thing that you can do. It seems to me that the community support that you've had during the pandemic has been really important to you. What suggestions would you have to increase involvement from, say, the Let's Localise alumni feature in school activities?
I mean, we kind of really connected with Let's Localise at a fortuitous time, and they've been so supportive in putting campaigns out there initially. But before, I think before the Department for Education and businesses really cottoned onto the idea of providing laptops and IT for disadvantaged students, Let's Localise were really supportive, and they've supported us with lots of campaigns to just do things a little bit differently during the pandemic. But I think there are so many ways in which people can support, and I think schools welcome that support with open arms. And we've just had a local company with an office clear out, and they've given us about 100 Liber Arch folders that we're giving to our year 11s in science, with all their science revision in ready packaged up for them. So it's things like that which feel quite low value, but they're high value in person, through to the laptop campaigns and the big high value projects. But also I think what we're seeing more and more of is how people can make a personal contribution with their own skill set and their own experiences. So it doesn't always have to be about finance. It doesn't always have to be about a physical resource, but it's also about how we can bring people into the school and use their skills and talents to support the current generation of young people.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a whole well of talent out there, isn't it? That's untapped at the moment from past students, and everybody's got something to bring to the table. Everybody's got something to offer, whether it be financial, whether it be volunteering, whether it be tutoring, lecturing. I know when I was at school many years ago, when we had a previous student come back to give us a talk about industry and so on, it was highly engaging, and it really brings it to life for the students. And I think that a lot of people automatically think of things like alumni programs of having to sort of contribute financially, but they don't necessarily have to. It can be skills, it could be anything. Do you think the millennials and the other Gen Z or Gen Z, as they call them, that have completed their education, do you think that they can help in creating a level playing field? And if so, how do you think they could do that?
I mean, I think it's that's a bottomless pit of resource. It really is, and we've actually just recruited this week somebody into a post who was educated here, and she was sort of just really inspired by one of our existing teachers who's still here. So she's bringing herself back into education now as a result. So having people come back here to be part of the school who are educated here is just that's the best feeling in the world. But there are so many other levels on which they can do that through mentoring and through coming back and really kind of talking about their experiences and giving our young people something to visualize, something to hook into, something that then raises their level of motivation, their level of aspiration. And I think there's nobody better to do that than particularly the Gen Z and the millennials, because they're the people with the closest contact. And and Peter, when you get to our age, it doesn't matter how passionate we are about education, there is a disconnect with the youngsters who are currently in education. So they may not yet feel like they have experience to do that, but they're more than experienced, and we'd really welcome back young people to keep in touch.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think the earlier they can start coming back into that system and contributing, I think the better it is. I know from my own children, you're dead right about the disconnect between old fogies like me and the Gen Zs. They relate to these people, they listen to them, and there's an enormous amount of wealth to be gained from that. And I think this is where the Let's Localise alumni feature really comes into its own, because it provides this sort of digital platform whereby anybody who's been to school can go and register themselves and hook up with their old school, whether they're Gen Z or whether they're ancient like us. It's quite interesting. So I think the Let's Localise alumni feature is something that, obviously we're going to push really hard, but it's just a great portal for getting people to hook up and sort of just re-engage again back with their old school.
Which is exactly why we're so keen to really engage in it.
Yeah. You mentioned to me when we were chatting before the interview, you mentioned an alumnus of yours that was working for a large corporation and introduced your school to that corporation just through conversation and the old-fashioned way of networking, I guess. And can you tell us a little bit about that and just how you think that's helped the school and that could obviously then be transported across into the digital domain through the alumni feature?
Yeah, it's a great story, Peter. When I first started at Theale Green School, we had a lot to do to get back on track as a school, and we were looking for people to support us in every possible way. And I was aware that one of our alumni and he has been very, very senior in Amazon. And it was my first year here, and I was actually on the school ski trip. And I just found his email address on the internet and just Googled him and said, look, we'd really love to have any help that you could offer. And Doug and his PA came straight back, and they were so willing to step in and help. And from that, lots came of that, and we're really grateful to Doug. But what it's meant is we've now made a completely new connection with Amazon, who have a big depot in Theale, and there's an amazing woman at Amazon called Fran, who's just connected with our deputy head, and they are looking for so many ways to support us that aren't, they're not big kind of social media kind of moments for Amazon. They're just genuine ways that they're really helping us with equipment, kit, people to help. There are just so many ways that they're doing it, and we feel like we've been so lucky to make that connection. But it came from one conversation with one alumnus, and a lot has developed from it. Yeah,
it's astonishing how linkages can be created that you would never expect just through old contacts. So yeah, really amazing. Finally, the last thing I'd like to ask you, Joe, is if there was one motto, one motivational quote, or something you would like to give to today's youth, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's really pertinent right now, and there were 3 or 4 things I was thinking about, Peter. But someone who I've admired and respected and read about throughout my whole life, which won't be of any surprise, is Nelson Mandela. And this was a man who, when he was a boy, was running barefoot around a village, and he is somebody who fundamentally changed the world. And there are things that we need changing in the world right now. And he said that education is the most powerful weapon with which you can change the world. And I think it's just really pertinent with what's happening in Eastern Europe. But I just think this generation have such potential to really get hold of the world and make a really significant difference, and engaging in everything that they do through school and having people come back and support them to do it, and really setting this generation off through a powerful education is it gives me hope and motivation.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that that the youth of today have got the whole world to look forward to, and I think they're going to do a better job of it than we did.
Well, I hope that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that quotes like that from Nelson Mandela are well worth taking on board and inspirational for everybody. Thanks very much for coming for the talk, Joe. Really appreciate it, and thanks for engaging with Let's Localise and the alumni feature as well.
Well, we're looking forward to really building our programme, and my husband and his sister are ex-alumni of Theale Green School, so I'm hoping they're going to be the first 2 people to sign up to the new programme. So we'll see.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.